Whether it's at home, work, or socially, relationships are the threads that keep the fabric called life either ripping away or knitted tightly together. This decades-long relationship coach and systemic therapist breaks down the reaction process to human experiences, her early days in Texas politics, and much, much more. This is Dr. Pam Monday, and you're watching Driven. All right, Dr. Pam Monday, thank you for coming on the show. And one of the main reasons why I brought you here on the show was because obviously this show, we have entrepreneurs, we have top tier corporate go-getters, and the common factor that all of them talk about is relationships, relationships, relationships. Whether it's with the VP of the company, the CEO, the vendors, the partner, the co-founder, everything revolves around relationships. And you've been, I believe, almost 40 years now, the Austin Relationship Repair Shop, correct?
Yes, sir.
So your life is dedicated around resolving relationship issues, fixing relationships. So I want to know first, obviously, how did the drive come about? But somehow you came from South Africa. You're going to school in South Africa, ended up at University of Texas, and that's how your love for all this happened. So how did the whole South Africa thing start first?
My dad was a petroleum engineer, and we moved to high school. We moved when I was in high school to South Africa, to Johannesburg. And it was a depressing time for me because I moved when I was 14 and had to start all over again. The good thing was I was a good student, and so I loved school, so I just immersed myself in school. I really didn't fit in with anybody. You know, who's this person coming in? I was kind of an oddity because I was American. But I did well in school, and I did not need to take the SAT to get into UT, the University of Texas. They had a different, they had a wonderful school system, but nobody ever prepped me for what do you do in college here? I didn't know. Yeah. So my parents' job was up. They bring me back to University of Texas. They drop me off, and they take off for Holland. So here I am, starting college at 17.
Hold on, so this is just got really interesting. So you come from South Africa, living, and in this time, you know, obviously there was a lot of, friction, a lot of things going on in South Africa.
It was during apartheid.
Okay.
Very different. In fact, I left when we were segregated. I get back, and 2.5 years later, we're integrated, and we never heard anything over there. There was no TV. Of course, everything was censored.
Yeah.
So it was just like culture shock when I got back.
Wow.
Just whole different world.
So you get here, parents are like, here's some money, here's whatever.
Yeah, go
Toodaloo.
to school, adios. So then I get in school and I start taking classes, just the regular classes, and they said you had to decide a major. What's that? Yeah. Well, my dad was an engineer. I knew I didn't want to do that.
Okay.
And my mother had gone to college, and she had gotten her degree in business, so I take business. I signed up for business classes. I am bored to tears.
Really?
I sleep through my classes. It's so boring. I hated it.
But what was it about business school or business classes? I'm sorry.
It wasn't interesting to me. It was just kind of cold and kind of
dry.
There wasn't any heart in it. It just didn't fit me. It was. I made good grades because I was a good student.
Yeah.
So I had to take my first elective. I took a psychology class. I sat there in that class and said, this is the most interesting thing I have ever heard. Wow. And I changed my major that day. I am 17, almost 18, and it doesn't dawn on me, how might I make a living do this? Yeah. I had no idea how many years it would take.
It was just fun or cool at the time.
So interesting, and it just came alive. And so I just whizzed through school with all the psychology courses I could possibly take. Yeah. And when I finished with my degree, then I realized, well, what do you do next? You have to get a master's degree.
Yeah, something.
So I did a master's degree, worked myself through school, was working for this person named Dr. Heyer, and I typed dissertations for a living, and I was the secretary of the department, typing tests for professors and things like that. Put myself through school. Got my master's degree. I was married then, and then I started working. Yeah, late 20s. And I started working in this field, and I realized I knew nothing. So I said, I think I need to go back to school.
Okay.
So that's when I said, okay, I've gone out there, I've tried to do work, I work for a psychologist, I don't know anything, so I was going to sign up for college. Well, it was another year before I could apply. And in the meantime, that's where that amazing thing happened that changed the direction of my life in terms of here is a turning point and you have to make a decision.
Okay.
What do you do?
Yeah.
So I was in New Braunfels where my parents lived, and my dad was in a horrible.
So they came back. They came back.
They came back, and
Holland.
they had retired.
Okay.
And my family would go there a lot, my husband and I, and we'd go boating, and my brothers would come up. We have a great time. And we were in a boat, and my dad was horribly killed in an accident.
Oh, my
it was
goodness.
tragic, just tragic. And it was one of those, I call it a God deal. Some people say it's just coincidence, but it was perfect timing because I'm there. I was in the hospital overnight, came home, and then we're waiting 3 days for the funeral. And right before we went boating that time, my mother's dog had puppies. And she had put the advertisement for the puppies in the paper. Mm-hmm. And so we're waiting for the funeral. The phone rings. I pick up the phone, and there is a voice on the phone asking about the puppies. And the voice was so distinct. I said, "Is this Dr. Heyer?" Mm-hmm. "Yes." I said, "This is Pam Monday. Remember, I worked for you for 5 years and spent 6 years or 8 years or something?" "Yes." Interesting thing is she was the executive director of a Senate committee with Ann Richards, Barbara Jordan, Frank Irwin, Gonzalo Barrientos,
A players,
you name it,
A
Bill
players.
Hobby, everybody was on this.
Yeah.
And she said, "We need a writer. You need to have a master's degree." I said, "Check." "We need a writer in the field of mental health and alcoholism.
Okay.
And we want you to write papers, and you'll need to be writing 30-page papers, and then you narrow them down for a 20-minute presentation. You present it to the committee, and then they create legislation." I said, "This sounds great." And I said, "Okay, good. I have another year before I get in school." She says, "No, you have to commit to 2. And I said, "Oh my gosh, wait, that's not my plan." And she said,
On 2 years of a job with them.
Yes, 2 years of a job. I had to commit, 2-year Senate committee. And so she said, "I tell you what, where do you want to go to school?" I said, "Well, I just want to get in a good PhD program, and probably UT." Mm-hmm. And she said, "Well, Frank Irwin is the chancellor, and I have a lot of experience in higher education." She said, "We'll guarantee you can get in at the college of your choice if you give us 2 years."
Wow.
So that was one of those things where I had to make a choice at that point.
And your late 20s still, roughly, around? Okay.
And I said, "Okay, you got a deal." So I started working, and I remember the first day of the legislative session, I'm sitting on the balcony watching this craziness. Yeah. I'm thinking, this is the best system in the world, and this is nuts. It just was like, oh.
Well, because you see the behind the scenes.
Oh, yes.
That's the interesting thing behind the scenes.
And all the wheeling and dealing, and I'm pretty straight shooter.
Yeah, yeah.
So, anyway, I decided I did not want to be in politics, but what I did learn to do is I learned to write, because I had to write these things. I was a good writer, but I learned how to really tailor it.
Yeah.
I learned how to speak. Okay. The very first speech that I gave was on recidivism, alcoholism, and Frank Irwin was an alcoholic, so was Ann Richards. They would drink each other under the table every night.
Really?
And neither one of them had gotten sober yet.
Did the public know that, though?
No. They kind of knew about
like
Frank.
Maybe rumors or whatever,
yes. Yeah. Weren't sure about her. She was so high functioning. She would have read every word of the 30 pages. And the next day when we would have a Senate committee, she would be able to ask so many questions. But what usually happened with Frank is that the person would start talking about it. Within 5 minutes, he'd say, okay, we'll pass it, no problem. So this is my first time, here are the TV cameras, and I start talking, and my voice is just shaking. I'm terrified, and I'm thinking, just 2 minutes, He listened to every word of this alcoholism paper. And what happened was, in that 20 minutes, after the first 5, my phobia of speaking left me. Really? I learned how to present. I learned how to speak to groups. I've done workshops all my career. And it sent me in a direction that I never dreamed I'd go in. And those relationships, when Ann Richards became governor years later and she'd gotten sober, she called me up and asked me, "What do we do about alcoholism in the prisons? Where do we start? Do we work with the families? Do we work?" It's relationships.
Yeah.
The people you meet.
Well, your brand also, you were the go-to source. You were like the go-to source, if you really think about it.
But I never really understood about networking till I saw how it worked. Some of that was the good old boy system, but she had the good old girl system,
Yeah.
And so anyway, it was a turning point for me, and it was a decision where there were times where I said, "What am I doing this for 2 years? I just want to go do therapy," and yet it was a wonderful lesson in so many ways to me, and really launched me. Where I met so many people that when I opened up my own shop, I knew who to go to and who to talk to, and had so many mentors around. I call them my angels, teaching me.
So let me ask you this. Do you think adding to the love for what obviously you've been doing for decades now was maybe because you saw dysfunction within that organization? And or no, I'm serious, because, we see, obviously with politics, I don't want to say the rumors, but the unspoken words is the Democrats and the Republicans fight all day long on TV, but behind the scenes are playing golf together. So was it kind of where you saw that firsthand, and how were they friends at the end of the day? Or
I was not consciously aware of that.
I see. Okay.
But I can tell you, in looking back, that I know how to teach people to talk and listen, to understand one another, to really get the other person.
Yeah, not just talk too much.
It's a structured skill.
Okay.
And what we see so much of now is, and it just escalates.
Yeah.
And so you see what I didn't want to do, but I wasn't consciously aware. By then I was like 30.
Okay.
Or 31 or something.
Yeah.
And so when I started my practice, when I was in my doctoral program, that's when I took a wonderful class on family systems. That's when it just opened up my world, because the usual world of psychology, you think, oh, there's something wrong with me.
Okay.
It's what is wrong with the space between us. You're not bad, I'm not bad, something between us.
There's an energy going around.
And we're doing the best we know how. We don't have the skills and tools. Who sits down at the table? Did your dad ever sit down at the table and say, did you feel sad, lonely, or afraid today? Who knows how to talk about that? Yeah. And so really learning about how do you really connect and listen to people. And that's what networking is when you're building a business, is really caring. Tell me about your wife. Tell me about your kids. What do you like to do? You like to play golf? Boy, I do too. How about croquet? Have you ever done that? Well, you lived in England. Well, you saw it. And so that is that connection where you really are present.
Yeah, and not cookie cutter type. Because what I've seen, obviously, I've had regular jobs before, and what I've seen is like the managers or the director. Hey, how's everything? How are the kids? Just these BS cookie cutter questions, though, because they've never seen your kid. They've never met your kid. But they're just saying, how are the kids?
They're being nice.
Yeah, they're being fake nice. But what you just said right now is a little bit more detail based off of maybe a few conversations you've had with that employee or that vendor or whoever it could be.
That's it.
But that's interesting you say that, how you saw with these A players, the behind the scenes, and then you start transferring it into obviously what you've been doing now.
Yeah.
But what point was it where you told yourself, I really want to go full force with men? Not obviously, it's not just mending relationships, but making them more fruitful and blossoming relationships with people as well. When exactly did that happen, where you said, I got to make this a career? Like, this is me.
I already knew it was a calling to be a therapist. And I loved helping people, and I loved learning about people. And then when I discovered family systems and how complex they are, but when you're working with people, my favorite way of doing therapy is bringing 3 generations in the room at the same time.
Really?
That is quick work. You can see all the things that have been brought down from across the generations, and there's so many other ways beside just one person in the room. When you're hearing one side of the story, when you're hearing all the sides of the story, there are other places to intervene. How about that? What did you hear him say just then? Oh, really? Well, what'd you hear him say? And have the family gossip about each other. There's so much possibility that opens up. So I was on fire with the idea of working with systems. And then I discovered a wonderful mentor, Harville and Helen Hendricks, that wrote Getting the Love You Want. Harville and Helen Hendricks.
Harville and
Imago. Imago's the Greek word of image.
Yeah.
And it says we absorb lessons growing up. And then when we fall in love, that high of new love, it's our unconscious mind picking something across the room, somebody in the room who, after the high of new love wears off, it always does, then that person's going to trigger our stuff that we bring to the table. We're going to try to work it out with that person.
Yeah.
That theory just got to me so deeply that I really did a lot of work. Harville and Helen were my trainer. I was on their international board, and I really immersed myself in that model of doing couples work.
I see.
That became my passion.
Mainly
the couples work.
I see.
And I also do a lot of families. I do family businesses. The rules of a family are
that
different
are
from the rules of the business. That gets real complicated. But I specialize in couples and family systems. And if somebody comes in here as an individual, I talk to an individual, but invariably they're talking about somebody in their life. And I'll say, would you like to bring them in? I can teach you how to talk to them rather than about them. It's much quicker work.
I see.
And if they don't come in, or they say, oh no, if I bring my mother in here, she'll die. I'll say, okay, here's some things you can do different. You change the other person by changing yourself. And that's what relationship is.
Because of the way they see you, way they see you, I guess. Yeah.
And we get so stuck in our ways of being that we can't think outside the box. So my job is to help open up worlds of possibility. And that's what just the passion for that. And to see people go, aha, oh man, I never thought of that. Oh, that's a great idea. Let's try that. And so here's your homework. Go experiment with that. Come back and tell me what it is. You can't fail an experiment. You just have new information for the next experiment.
I see.
And that's my passion. I love doing this.
So now, obviously, because you're decades into this, are you still on fire for couples as much as you were kind of from day one?
Absolutely.
Or really?
Absolutely.
No. That's the reason I ask is because I'm real curious, because obviously culture changes, mindsets change. What was acceptable for couples to, let's just say if you want to take a girl out on a date in 1982, probably totally different than what you're doing now in 2019.
The rules are different.
Rules are different.
The relationship issues are the same.
I see.
Over and over and over again. And I think nowadays...
What are the top three, or after you say, what are the top three that you're constantly
Everyone says communication, right?
Okay.
You cannot not communicate. You're always communicating something.
Yeah.
It's just the message you're sending is not the message your partner gets.
Okay.
And so we pass like two ships in the night. We begin to make assumptions. We need 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative. I don't notice how good my right foot feels if my left foot has a thorn in it. I'm focusing on the thorn. So we begin to distant, we begin to get defensive, we begin to make up stories about the other person. Stories I'm hearing a lot lately. He's a narcissist. She's a borderline. They all got those words.
The N-word, the
and then
narcissist
that's all
word.
they see, and they brace themselves before they go in the door because they've made up these stories.
Yeah.
If you don't feel good, you make up a story about what's happening, what's making me feel bad. Well, it must be you. So if you change that, I'd feel better. But the biggest reason that people part these days is they say we grew apart, which means the relationship is not doing well.
Yeah.
We're living parallel lives and we don't know how to connect in an emotionally intimate way. We don't know how to talk and listen about the scary stuff.
Yeah.
Or we have that unnatural heaviness of unspoken thoughts.
Yeah. Well, okay, let me ask you this. What percentage of your clients now, because obviously not every relationship, in my opinion, should be a relationship.
Exactly.
Just because certain things were good in the beginning doesn't mean it's going to be like that 20, 30 years later.
Exactly.
And of course, some could be a relationship out of convenience. Oh, he makes a lot of money and I just want to be a stay-at-home mom. Hey, what's up? He drives a Porsche.
Yes.
Or vice versa. It could be the other way around. The girl, beautiful woman, beautiful body, and the guy says, I want her just for that. And they should have never been together to begin with.
You bet.
But what percentage do you see now are those type of relationships where you could try to repair it, but maybe it's best to not even repair it?
Well, it's interesting. I have some divorce attorney friends
Okay.
that really try to, when someone comes to their office for a divorce, they'll always say, have you all done any therapy? Do you have kids? Not to get back together, but let's repair this relationship because you're stuck together forever because of these kids.
Yeah.
And so working with those folks, working with helping couples split if they decide that they're going to split, because now you don't need anybody's permission. You can leave if you want. And I get a lot of people in there where one has a foot out the door and the other one says, please, please, please stay.
Yeah.
And so what I say is, whether you divorce or not is up to you.
Okay.
I can't do that, but I can teach you how to make this space between you better. So if you can co-parent if you choose to,
Okay.
or you can decide how to leave without hating each other and racking up those bills with the lawyers.
Death threats
Yeah.
also and all kinds of weird stuff.
And we also don't have the shame we used to have about divorce. It's much more common.
Yeah.
And people are also much more quick to get out. There's
I
less
see.
commitment. They're quicker with the day and age of technology,
Okay.
that people are quicker to hook up,
Yeah.
move in together. In the high of new lust, it's actually a chemical, phenylethylamine.
Wait, how do you say it again?
It's called phenylethylamine, PEA.
Phenylethylamine?
Phenylethylamine,
Okay.
PEA for short.
Okay.
And it's a speed-like chemical that's in the brain. It's the high of new lust.
Yeah.
And people think that's love. It
Yeah.
isn't. It's designed to
Puppy
get us.
love,
It's
kinda.
designed to get us together to mate, not designed to keep us together. So that wears off like all high of new love
Yeah.
wears off. It's exhausting. You can't
Yeah.
do this forever. And when it wears off, people do what I call meet, fall in love, hit the wall, change partners, keep the problem.
You got it down.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And if you think that's love, it's not going to be. And in fact, people who have affairs and leave their partners and marry, they have a 1 in 10 chance of it making. Because they're just trying to escape from problems and, oh, isn't this fun? And this feels better than this hard work of marriage.
I see.
So-
This is just a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound, we'll call it.
And there you go, it doesn't work. And so it's about when somebody comes in, helping find out what are their goals and setting the goals. It's not my job to tell them I'm going to fix your relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a magic wand in my office, and I say, okay, here you go. You don't have to do anything.
Pay me my fee and it's fixed.
But do you want to talk and listen and really understand the other person's perspective? I have some wonderful skills and tools that Harville Hendricks developed that I teach people. And there's this aha that is wonderful where they say, oh my gosh, and I say, you know what, you've been talking for 30 minutes about something that if you were home you would have been fighting within 2. How does that feel?
Yeah.
It's much better. I said, okay, now you learn to do this, you can do that with your kids.
Okay.
You got an acting out teenager? Let's try that with your teens. Watch them de-escalate.
I see.
And that's the power of it and the beauty of it and I'm so honored to do this work. I love it, what I do.
So something interesting you said just a little while ago that I want to elaborate on. Obviously, with technology, realistically, let's just say, and you could be any age, you could be 53, you could be 18, man or woman, mostly women, because obviously the guy, in my opinion, are mainly the ones hunting, we'll call it. They're the ones going out. So women nowadays are constantly getting bombarded on whether it's Instagram, Facebook, I don't want to say LinkedIn, who knows, unless it's a sneaky guy coming at them, but they're getting bombarded also depending on how they, I don't want to even call it market themselves, but what they put out into the universe.
Right.
Okay. So depending on the content of what they put out, or even some guys say, I really find that attractive and appealing about this woman because she's not like all these booty models or show my
Right.
body, whatever. So what I'm getting at is this, with nowadays, especially women, having men constantly in their inbox, in their direct messages, in the DMs,
Right.
they have very many more, I don't want to say options, but possibly we'll call it options that are literally at their fingertips.
Right.
So if Mike over here that they've been with for 10, 15, 20 years ain't cutting it or pissed them off one day or whatever, they've got 7 or 8 guys at their disposal, that's how the veering off, we'll call it, starts. So my question to you, because obviously you've been doing this for so long, why do men or women, and obviously it could be 2 different reasonings, why do they cheat? And especially now, is it more common and is it faster paced hookup or?
Because it is so much easier with technology,
Okay.
and it's an escape.
I
It
see.
feels better to be titillated by this phenylethylamine, that excitement. That's what they're feeling. That takes you away from the boredom, the hassle, the struggles of a relationship. If you're not getting your needs met, you fight about it, but if you don't know how to talk about it and how to different stages of life, you have different needs. Kids grow up, kids leave home, it's just you and me, babe, what do we do? Oh, we've been focused on the kids for 25 years, what do we do now? And so they begin to go like this, and they're not talking, they're getting more and more superficial, and then there it's ready, there. Men do that as much as women because it's so much easier, and that's where online porn really comes in. Get their needs met so they don't have to deal with her.
Yeah.
They don't have to fight over sex. But it's that titillation, that draw, that excitement. It's immediate reinforcement. And it's addictive. It's meant to be addictive. It's instant gratification.
Yeah.
If you don't like this one, you swipe, and then there's another one.
Left or right,
and
whatever.
it's an escape.
Yeah.
All of those kind of addictive things are an escape from feelings, so you don't have to deal with feelings.
Do you think, and obviously I'm a man, but do you think women like to, we'll call it flirt, play around on the internet? Oh, we didn't do nothing. But because, and I've been told this by a woman, that's why I want to ask you, because you deal with more women than I do, that they do certain things online to see if they still got it. Can I still get someone's attention? Are guys still coming, even though they got the husband at home and the kids and the life and the career and the business or whatever, that they just like to kind of flirt just to know they still got it? Or
well, you can say that same thing about men.
No, that's what I'm saying.
And so it's not specific to women. There are a group of women who do that. If they don't have other interesting things in their lives, or they don't have good relationships, they don't have a good sense of self. Oftentimes you don't have a strong sense of self or have a meaning and purpose, and you don't feel loved by your spouse, then that may where you might do that. But it also depends what are the values you have.
True.
Some women will just get depressed rather than go online to find something else. But it's the availability of the ability to interact with a lot of people that are superficial relationships, and it's also dangerous. It's increasingly dangerous. That's the problem. Because we have less opportunities. I mean, the kids today, that they do match. Rather than meet people doing things or whatever, Tinder or whatever the latest thing is. And so
if he likes me and I like him, we connect, and that's all it is.
We don't form relationships. It's chemistry.
I see.
Rather than spending time to really get to know somebody. That's something that's going away. And people are more and more lonely as a result of it. And you can also get that kind of high. You've never met the person, but you're dinging back and forth. And they're saying wonderful things. And man, is this more interesting than my mate?
They tell me I'm not beautiful more than the one I've been with for 10 years or 5 years.
And men will do the same thing. Gee, somebody's thinking I'm good.
Yeah.
And so the opportunities are far more out there, and we do not have the social structures that say that's not such a good thing to do. It's more and more frequent.
I see.
And so that's an issue.
Do you think that the number one reason that men kind of veer off from a relationship is strictly for the sex, or is it an emotional thing for them, or is it just, I just want to hook up with something else?
Well,
I'm tired of her, or I don't see her how we were when we were 23 anymore. Her body's changed or whatever. In your experience, why is it that men go away from the farm a little bit?
Men have been doing that since the beginning of time. And it's only recently that it's not okay. But the difference at men, it is true that men are more likely to just say it's just sex.
Yeah.
Women are usually more likely to want a relationship. And that's where it gets into trouble. What's happening for her is the relationship isn't working, so she don't want to have sex with him. But he's saying, sex and companionship are the top of my list. Those are the top two what men want.
Yeah.
And so she'll stop having sex with him because she doesn't feel good with him. And the relationship has some problems. And she can go longer without sex than he can because he's full of testosterone. And so they fight about it rather than sitting down, hey, what's going on with you and me? Because when you start talking about it, then you feel more connected. I have seen anger and resentment evaporate when someone says, oh, is that what you were thinking? I had no idea. Well, never mind. I was making up a story. We're on the same page. Never mind. Literally, it evaporates. I never thought about that. I was making up the bad story.
Wow.
And sex is kind of a barometer for what's happening with couples. And invariably, it slows down from the height of new love. Remember, it's designed to get us together and mate, not to keep us together. But over time, hormones, as couples age, but their treatment for that. It's just, can the couple talk about it?
I see.
And so I had a wonderful Dr. Pat Love, who's written many, many books. She wrote a book called Hot Monogamy about sexuality. And he said, for any woman, if you are not having sex with your man, it is unrealistic to think he might not go somewhere else. And a lot of times women don't even think about that, and then if he has an affair, they're furious.
Yeah.
But if
Why
you
did
are,
you? Well, hello.
If you are withholding sex, men are sexual creatures more often than women.
Yeah.
The men are low, medium, high testosterone. Women are low, medium, high testosterone. The highest level of testosterone in women is still below the lowest testosterone level in men.
Really?
And that's what fuels sexual desire. So there's a discrepancy. But at the beginning, when everybody's on speed, man, I've met my perfect match.
Yeah.
But then you go back to your regular self. So that requires conversation.
You get dumbed down. This guy continues on his testosterone skyrocketing spree, whatever you want to call it. And they just don't
women
click.
are expecting a lot more from men than they used to. They're expecting emotional connection, and men say, "What is that? Don't I provide for you?" It's in men's DNA to be a provider. It's in women's DNA to tend and befriend the flock, the kids. But we're really more egalitarian now, and we share roles. And that's been really hard as men have tried to learn how to do this thing called emotional connection when they don't have any mentoring for that. Nobody asks them, "Were you sad, lonely, or afraid today?" at the dinner table, usually. Now that's beginning to change.
And I think it's because of culture and the way you were growing up. Obviously, you can take people that are old school, we'll say, still open the car door for the woman. Go, not even on a date, but I'm talking about you've been married for 12 years.
And that's the rule, and that's what they do.
Yeah, but some don't, though. That's what I'm saying. There'll be people that are going on a first date with the woman, and they're just like, beep, beep. The alarm goes, they unarm the car. She gets in, he gets in. Okay, let's go. Let's go hook up at the apartment or whatever it is.
Their mama didn't teach him right.
Well, no. So that's exactly my point.
But it's different.
So what I'm saying is, because I'm looking at this younger generation, and you can see, I don't know if it's culture, where it's no longer cool to do this or that for the woman. Like, good example. If I were to take a girl out anywhere, let's say if I go on a date, I'm a single guy. Let's say if I go on a date, I personally was, I don't say trained, but raised where if we're walking down the street, let's say that's the wall, I walk between the street, me, and the woman up against the wall, okay? But me personally, I look at couples and I say, why isn't, and I'm not going to go tell them something. I'm not the chivalry police or whatever.
They weren't taught that way.
Yeah, they weren't trained like that.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm just kind of curious. Do you think it's something that's just deteriorating over time now to where men aren't men anymore that take care of the woman like they were 50 years ago?
Well, when my boys were growing up, they took cotillion and they learned how to open the door. Yeah. I don't know. I have to ask my grandkids, are you teaching manners there? Because my sons pass on the manners that they were taught. But in this day and age, it's not so nice. It's more me. It's not so respectful. It's modeled everywhere. The rules have all changed.
Yeah.
I think it would be very difficult in this day and age to be a teenager. I've got 3 of my 5 grandchildren are teenagers. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And my 16-year-old granddaughter is very focused on looks, how you look. And she's learning that, you know what, I want to look cute and sexy, but boy, some guys are going to come after me that I don't want.
And see, that's what I'm saying. They're at your disposal now to where you might be wanting to compete with some of the girls on Instagram. They wear their clothes like this. They wear their makeup like this. So you're like, I want to keep up with my peers.
Right.
But once I do that, look who I attract.
And there's a truth to that, and then they hate hearing that because everybody's wearing those short shorts up to here.
Yep. And with the shirt covering the short shorts, so you think they have nothing.
Yeah. So it has changed, and that's the family is so important in terms of what are the values we're going to pass on.
I see.
And if the rules have changed, okay, it's okay now for you to wear these sleeveless little thingies to school. Yeah. Okay, well, how low is it going to be? What's our rule in the house? And of course, that gives teenagers things to fight about. But where's the balance when you're a parent, so that you're not saying no, you're going to have to wear a flour sack, but how can you fit in, but not put it all out there that you will draw the kind of guys that will take advantage of you, because that's what happens. Yeah. Teenagers don't understand the dangers out there.
Yep.
And there's a lot more violence.
And even nowadays, even with Uber, we were talking technology earlier. Mm-hmm. Remember back in the day, don't get in the car with strangers and da-da-da. And now we have parents that are paying the Uber bills for the teenage daughter to get in the car with a random guy, never met him before, because it's safe.
Right.
When it could be just as bad, because you see these stories all the time. The Uber driver did this, he did this, and
Yeah.
And it's horrible, but one question that I had on relationships specifically, because I've seen it with so many friends of mine, husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever, they're together. They split up.
Mm-hmm.
One of them starts being real ugly. Ugly text messages, ugly this, ugly that. And let's say they have kids together, okay?
Right.
Communicating ugly, negative about something about the kid didn't have the right shoes when he got picked up from school today or whatever it is, but they just hammer and hammer. What is the reason for that? Like, I intentionally want to go out of my way to be as ugly as I can to you
and
over something this small.
Devastating
to
children.
But why though?
Because it's easier to be mad.
Okay.
That's that defensive, than it is to be sad, lonely, afraid. And they're trying to avoid the grief.
I see. So
loss.
It's a compensation maybe.
Absolutely. Anytime you see somebody defensive, they're in the limbic system brain, the part we share with crocodiles.
Okay.
It operates fight, flight part of the brain. Rah, kill the enemy, or run and hide so the enemy won't kill me, or freeze, maybe the enemy won't see me. And we're in this part of the brain, it operates 8 times faster than this rational, calm part of the brain. So when we're threatened, we go into that fight response. And people can stay mad at their ex and hate them and tell everybody else for all their lives and be miserable inside because they don't want to feel the loss. Better be defensive than to be sad and vulnerable. But they'll never get through their grief process, and they'll carry all that into the next relationship.
True.
It's really tragic. They're just, acid destroys the vessel that holds it.
Yeah.
And it destroys children to be in the middle of that, to hear those
Seeing
horrible
it
things.
all, yeah.
Yeah. Biggest predictor of post-divorce adjustment for children is the level of conflict between the parents. The higher the conflict, the less the adjustment, the harder it is for those kids to adjust. It's tragic. I see a lot of people that are in the midst of that.
And it's of all levels of income or social class too.
Yeah. Doesn't matter who. Yeah. A lot of times the wealthier people have more money to fight. Sometimes the people with less money realize, oh man, we don't have we just get her. Sometimes that works better than if you have plenty of money. Or if somebody has lots of money and his wife never, they had traditional marriage. He ran the show and made the money, and she was housewife. And 25 years later, she hadn't worked in forever, and he says, I'm going to punish you. I'm going to get you. Those are the bad guys. That's
I went to private school the majority of my life here in Austin, Texas, and then in high school, I ended up going to Bowie High School.
Yeah.
So we saw Circle C, Shady Hollow, and we were never Shady Hollow or Circle C type of income, I'll call it like that. But those were the friends we had. And when I was going to in private school, one of the schools was Hyde Park. So we saw, top tier, rich families, I guess you could call it. And the one thing that I consistently saw, and I'm not saying everybody, but coming into relationships with families, was I would realize the parents, I don't want to say they're buying off the kids, but it's kind of like, just buy them a new car, just buy them this, just give. They're
crippling their kids.
Yeah, so now what happens is, now they're 35, 40 years old, they were drug addicts, they never had a real job, mom and daddy were paying their rent, dad was always a solution, you wreck the car, the dad, gets you another one 24 hours later. And I would see, and, my thing, as an entrepreneur, business owner, doing what I do now, my father always had money. He's an old Persian guy with a lot of money. I just leave it like that, okay? But here's what I think with my relationship with my father, which was never really Candyland. Because we never had the, like you said earlier, what's bothering you today? Or I love you. Or we never had we never had that type of relationship, okay?
Right.
So I wasn't, emotionally, he wasn't there, I'll put it like that. Financially, he wasn't there either. Right. And what I mean by that is because I think one of the things that has given me the most, and it's funny we're even talking about it because I don't really talk about it much, but here it comes, is because I think the drive that I have to succeed is because of what I didn't get. Because I'm like, I want to play at A player level.
Right.
But I have somebody who could help finance me to become an A player, but is choosing not to. What do I got to do? I got to figure it out on my own, compared to children of other rich Persians that we saw growing up, their dad got them this, their dad got them that, their dad got them that. And looking at them now, I'm like,
yeah,
dude, you didn't do much in life, you know?
Yeah, they were enabled to not be responsible. And that's the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
In terms of you're crippling your kids. And sometimes people give too much because they didn't get enough. But they also, it's so much easier to give them money
Give them a check
than
or
to
put it.
talk. What you
I
want
see.
that money for? What's going on? How are you going to spend that? Do you know how to? Let's see if you learn how to balance checkbook. Because
Yeah.
it takes effort and time to do a relationship. In this busy, busy world, we don't have time.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that are CEOs of corporations don't have any time for family.
Yeah.
And
just
they
cut
don't
a
have
check to the
time for
kid
kids.
or-
And mom's going to take care of them. Some of those traditional marriages, there are a lot of dads that are much more involved than they used to be. That really is true.
I
They
see.
show up for the things. They make sure they show up.
T-ball
But-
or whatever, soccer.
so they're there and they're present.
Yeah.
But it's the relationship. And that's why people that don't have a relationship with their kid, if they try to discipline, the kid doesn't respect them or doesn't pay attention to them. You cannot discipline a kid if they don't respect you. Now you can forcefully beat them to death if you plan to do it.
And they'll
but
be scared of
run
you, though.
off
They'll-
and
they
they'll
get
be
scared of you.
But you're not going to teach them respect and how to be responsible. And
see.
so people need to be taught that. If they didn't have role models for that, then you either decide to raise yourself, do it on your own. I'm going to succeed in spite of myself, or you do the other extreme and say, "Well, I give up. I feel hopeless."
Yeah. Okay, so obviously you've been doing this for decades now, and you've seen all levels of parenting, whether it's with the 5-year-old, the 6-year-old, the 40-year-old, still doing with the 40-year-olds. What are some methods, tactics, strategies that parents can start communicating better with their children?
The first thing to do is to listen to understand the child's perspective
Okay.
before you try to teach them anything. Because if they're upset and you're lecturing, moralizing, scolding, trying to tell them, doing this,
Yeah.
they are not going to hear because they're in this part of the brain.
Okay.
So here's an example. My son was 12 or 13. He was always great in trumpet. He was first chair in trumpet. He comes home from school one day and says, "Mom, I'm quitting band." My first thing is, "Oh, come on, you're not in quit band." "I am too." "Oh, come on, that's ridiculous. What's the matter with you?" He escalated, went in his room and slammed the door. Bad parenting. I thought, wait, I can do this. Take a breath. What am I supposed to do? Oh, walk up there, knock on the door. What?
So you're still a relationship
yes.
woman at this
Yes, but
point.
I didn't do that good parenting when I was
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
"What's the
yeah.
matter with you?" I was dismissing him.
You
Get
were
over
mom.
yourself.
You were mom,
Yeah.
not yet.
Yeah, not good.
Okay.
I went and knocked on the door. "What? Can we start over? Tell me again." "I want to stop band. I'm sick of band. I'm getting out of band." "So you say you're sick of band, you're getting out of band. Have I got it?" "Yeah, tell me more." You know, I just got so upset today. "You got upset. What happened? Tell me more."
Yeah.
Turns out he told me more, and the more was that somebody else beat him for that first chair. And he felt so bad. And I said, "You know, that makes so much sense. That'd be upsetting because you've always been so good. And it's really hard to be second place. And I imagine you might be sad, or you might be disappointed in yourself, or might feel kind of let down or hopeless." "Yeah." I said, "I'm so sorry that happened to you. How can I help?" He sat there a moment. "Oh, I don't really want to quit band." So instead of escalating it like I did at the beginning,
Yeah.
fighting with him about him, I wanted to hear more about what was going on.
I saw 3 things right there just in what you told me. Number 1, some mirroring. You repeated basically the last thing he said. Okay. The second one was empathy.
I validated what he said before I did empathy.
Okay.
I
Okay.
validated, makes so much sense you'd be upset. And I imagine you might be feeling, that's the empathy, I imagine you might be
Okay.
feeling sad, disappointed.
And then the third one was, I don't know what the
Mirror,
technical term.
validate, empathize. What was the third thing what'd you hear?
Well, I don't want to call it solution, but it was more of support available.
Yeah.
But I know there might be another
And
term for that.
How can I help you? What can I
Yeah.
do? Because so many times we're telling them, okay, you just need to study some more, you need to work harder, you need to practice more.
Yeah.
How can I help? Let them think, what do I need? They may just need you to listen.
Yeah.
They may decide to figure it out on themselves, because so often we're trying to teach them so much rather than teach them how to think about their problem. And once they get out of this part of the brain and they're calmer, then they can think. They can use this part of the brain.
I
And he
see.
spontaneously came up with a solution.
I see.
So mirror, validate, empathize. How can I help? And it works with a spouse. It works with your
boss.
co-workers. It works with your boss.
Yeah.
Mirror, validate, and empathize. Magical tools.
And that first one is something that I use with negotiation.
There you go.
Let's say somebody says, well, we can do $500. And that's what I do. $500? And what happens, this is with experience, it gets them to think like, oh crap, was it too low? Oh,
it's
crap.
a different way of mirroring.
Yeah.
Because it makes them say, what?
Yeah.
But that's negotiation.
Yeah, it throws it back at them.
Yeah.
And even if it's like maybe in a relationship, if let's say the husband and the wife want to go and eat, and you, obviously, what do you want to eat? I don't know. And then someone complains when you take them. They say they don't know and they still complain, right? But imagine, let's go get Chinese food. Chinese food. Then the man could say, oh, yeah, how about Mexican? Or whatever it could be. So, but yeah, so mirroring, validating.
Validate what makes sense about the other person's point of view, even if you don't agree.
Okay.
Because it's their truth at the moment. I'm a terrible trumpet player.
Okay.
So, gee, it makes sense. If you think you're a terrible trumpet player, how horrible that might be, and that you might really feel hopeless. What makes sense about their world? You do not have to agree to validate someone else's truth, because at that moment, it's their truth. Not I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Validate and empathize.
That's what they perceive of themselves at the time.
Yes, that's what's going on. So you're trying to understand what's the deeper level of stuff going on. Because the kind of mirroring you're talking about is you're doing a
tactical.
There's a tactical thing there,
mirroring,
not so much the real just mirroring back
yeah.
so they can hear themselves objectively. Because when we're upset, we can't hear ourselves objectively. Someone says, why are you so mad? I'm not mad.
Yeah.
But if you mirror it back, their own tone of voice and their own words, as close as possible to what they say, they can hear themselves objectively.
Yeah,
and they may correct it, they may not, but they calm down this part of the brain. They're not feeling defensive.
I see.
And that's where the anger dissipates and the fear, because they're lowering their guard rather than having to defend themselves against your fight. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
That's the difference.
What do you think, or we got about maybe 5-10 minutes left. What are maybe a few, no, that was with kids. Now, what about with couples? Obviously, communication was a huge one, but what are 3 strategies that you would recommend for a couple that right now is fighting over lack of communication?
First thing they need to do is learn how to say time out, to have an agreement that they, whether it's this or a word they come up with or a phrase, that if anybody says time out, what that means is they both agree. It's not someone pointing the finger, you need to stop this.
Okay.
Anybody says time out, it means something's going on right now that one or both of us are getting reactive. Let's call a timeout, let's zip it, and notice what's going on. You notice what's going on with you, I'll notice what's going on with me. And the purpose of a timeout is to put water on the fire, not fuel on the fire.
Okay.
So you're calming yourself down. Let me calm myself down, we can talk about this later. Take a timeout. Then once you have the skills to come back, you make an appointment to talk about what went on.
Okay.
Because a lot of times we just get mad and escalate, and then 2 days later somebody say, I remember what you said the other day, and they say, I didn't say anything. So that timeout is great.
It's happened to me a lot of times. I never said, and I'm wishing I could have had it recorded on the smartphone.
And the other thing beside that, mirror, validate, empathize when you talk, and that takes skill to learn it.
Okay.
And the timeout, interrupt the negative, put money back in the relationship bank. You make a list of 10 things that when your partner does them or says them, you feel loved and cared about.
Okay.
When you bring me coffee, when you text me. She makes a list, or your partner makes a list, 10 things that when you do them or say them, she feels loved and cared about, or he feels loved and cared about. And then you swap lists. And every day, regardless of how you're feeling toward your partner, do 2 things on that list each day that sends the message to your partner that I'm thinking of what makes you feel loved. And it has to be something that's a gift freely given. That means I don't have resentment.
Okay.
So if one thing on your list is I feel loved and cared about when you have sex with me, if she's not feeling connected to you and she won't do that without resentment, then she doesn't do that, but she may be happy to fix you dinner. So you put as many things on your list, start with 10. And then every day you're putting money in the relationship bank, regardless of what your partner does. Not tit for tat, I'll do it if you do. But twice a day,
you do it regardless.
I'm going to do things that I know signal to you feel loved and cared about. Because often we give what we want to receive, and our partner doesn't appreciate it because it's not their language of love.
I see.
So there are your three things.
And it's funny, something you just said about language. There's a Dr. Bruce Lipton. Have you heard of him? Okay, I think he's like epigenetics and quantum biology and all this. Yeah, it's a little bit deeper kind of about the world itself.
Different field.
Yeah, but there's something that he said. This was 2 or 3 years ago, I heard. He said language killed feelings. Okay, so what I took that as is when he elaborated on it was, we have a gut feeling about certain things. But obviously a lot of times the language, oh, no, she's a good person or he's a good person. That's a great employee, and just give them a chance.
Right.
But internally, there's something up with this dude, or this woman isn't the right fit for this company, or this relationship or something. What do you think about something like that? Do you think your gut feeling is what you go with? Or do you let someone kind of sell themselves and, well, let's see if...
Well, that's more complicated with employees. But the problem with gut feelings is that woman may remind you of Aunt Susie that you always hated and you don't remember. So if you have that feeling about a employer,
you relate it to
doing
something
this,
else.
there's something else that you're not even aware of, it's unconscious, but you just don't like it. See that a lot of times in work settings.
Okay.
So that's where you go to a mentor or a superior or something to talk about, here's what I don't feel good about. And do we have a team that we can talk about this, where somebody can hear you about that and then not dismiss you. Oh, it's just you. Hey, she's fine. Everybody loves her. But that's part of being a good businessman or being a good manager. You get a sense for who fits with our culture or somebody that's sabotaging things. Because the system operates at the level of the lowest functioning person. That's where the person that's creating problems, the whole world focuses on that and wastes a lot of time and energy, whether it's a work setting or whether it's a family.
Like the cancer starts right here.
Yeah. And that there are some people like that are just really toxic. And they're usually people that have their own internal struggles for sure, but they can suck people in, either trying to help them too much, or they get away with stuff and other people take over their jobs and overfunction and underfunction. It's complicated, but to be able to get some guidance from someone you trust in the company to say that this doesn't feel good to me, and see if somebody else can say, hey, I'm feeling that too, rather than it may be my Aunt Susie that I didn't like back then, because sometimes that's going on.
Okay, so now to get close to closing it out, going with company, what are a few ways that employees, let's say you got a real rocky bumphead relationship with your boss. Obviously you can't, I don't know if it's the same methods or whatever, but a boss you look at differently than your lover at home or the husband or the girlfriend or whoever it is. What are a few things that you can recommend that can help people obviously watching right now? Yeah, that's me. I have a horrible relationship with my boss. How can I start making it better? They're out to get me, or whatever it could be.
That is such a difficult question to answer simply. Because the boss has power. And so you do not have equal power. And if that boss is creating problems at the top of the family, you got parents with problems, you're going to have kids with problems. In a government. In any system. So the boss has power that you don't have. Now, if it's a culture where I'm going to take some feedback and we're going to do a two-way performance review, how do you like the way I manage? Because
rather
there are
than
a lot
me
of
just
people
telling you everything about you.
There are a lot of people in management that know nothing about management style, or the engineers that get put into management fields and they don't want it.
They were technicians, not managers.
Yes, they don't want to do that. And so that's where you go to HR. You get somebody else to be the mediator with that. You can try to sit down and say, I really would like, I'm having some trouble here and I wonder if we can just talk calmly. And if that boss has good skills, then he or she will listen to understand. If they get defensive, they're not safe to talk to. And that's where you need those HR people or those other people. Sometimes people just have to leave a job if they've got a real toxic boss. And you'll know it's toxic because a lot of people have left.
Hey, it's funny you say that, because one thing I've heard in the past is people don't quit their job, they quit their boss. So
that's really true.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you just said that. So now to close it out, is there anything that you want to leave us with relationship advice, mending relationships, making them blossom, just anything, even if it's 30 seconds or 1 minute of gems that you just want to drop so we can be more fruitful in everything that we do relationship-wise?
The key to relationship is really be interested in the otherness of the other person rather than threatened by it. And if you don't understand it, then to ask, tell me more about what you're thinking. Tell me how come you think that way? Where'd that come from? I really want to understand you. I want to listen to understand. So just tell me some more. To go deeper into conversation, because oftentimes somebody says something, we get immediately reactive. We're in this part of the brain, and we turn them off, or we get mad, or we fire back. And as soon as you're firing back, you're in crocodile brain, and you're not going to get anywhere. So really being present. Turn your phone off. Turn the television off. Turn down the radio.
All the
Stop
distractions.
looking at your stuff. Sit down with someone. Look them in the eyes.
Have dinner with them instead of
exactly.
doing all this.
Oh my God, that's a huge one. But
go to any restaurant, you see that.
It is. And that's that culture of disconnect where more and more people are lonely. Relationships is all you take when you die. That's it. Who do you want around your bed as you're dying? What have you done for the world? What have you done to make this world a better place? What's your legacy you want to leave? And so many times it's a relationship. It does not matter how much money you have. You cannot buy happiness.
That's very
true. So
true.
really connecting with other people and caring about them, and also being willing to be vulnerable, own your own stuff. You know what? I goofed. I did. That was wrong on me. I'm so sorry. And really meaning it. Not I'm sorry, but I'm sorry.
However, you did one time.
Exactly. It's all your fault. So really owning your stuff. And by owning your own stuff, you can model for the other person. It makes it safer for them to lower their defense and lower their guard. And you'd never, ever use the stuff you learned about another person to hurt them later.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, very good. This has been a very powerful talk, because there's things that I'm like, you know what? I do remember hearing something about that, or I do remember somebody use that strategy, or something happened, something like this. So it's all making sense now, because you broke it down into easy to understand language, and of course certain instances, because for the most of us that have kids, like, you know, when you went into mode, your son was 12, I think you said, you went into mom mode rather than
it was not helpful.
Rather than mom/therapist, trained specialist, expert mode. So at all levels, we all make mistakes, but obviously I'm glad you came on the show. People watching can use some of this, apply it to their relationships, whether it's job, intimate, or friendships or whatever, because life is all about relationships. And it's even with our animals. We have relationships with our animals.
Those are the hardest, to listen to the other side.
When they can't tell you, but it's the feelings, not the language. Very good, Dr. Pam. I appreciate you.
So good to talk with you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.